Cartwright. I'm the education coordinator here at the gallery. This is another installment of our Gallery Learning Lab series. So we do a series of workshops over late February into late March. Today's workshop is going to be kind of focused on how to market yourself as an artist, kind of take where you are now, like in your classes here at HCC, and project forward a little bit. Like how do you begin to kind of make like a cohesive portfolio with your work? How do you start advertising it to different audiences? How do you go from like where you are now and then project forward to like where you want to be? And we're very fortunate today to have Nneka Jones here giving this presentation. She's a Trinidadian-born artist who now lives in Tampa, lives here, works here. She has been internationally exhibited, so not just in Florida, not just in the US, but also globally. Her work has been shown. So she's also only a few years removed from earning her BFA, her Bachelor's of Fine Arts, here in Tampa at the University of Tampa. So it's someone who is very kind of close to your own age and situation, who now is like living, working as an artist, as a full-time job. So where you would like to be someday. I could give a lot more background info. I could do more of the bio, but that would be spoiling some of what we're going to talk about today. So Nneka's actually going to tell you about her journey in becoming a full-time artist, and I'll let her kind of take it from here.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, James. And hi, everyone. My name is Nneka Jones again. I'm really excited to speak with you guys today. And as James said, I haven't graduated that long. I graduated in 2020, and I've been a full-time artist since. So I'm excited to share my journey with you guys. So before we get started, of course, we have to define art. For me, I've always thought of art as a universal language that we can all understand, all connect with. And that could take shape in many different forms in 2D arts, three-dimensional performance, literature. But today I want to speak about my specific visual arts journey and kind of walk you through the very beginning to where I'm at right now. So I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. These two pictures are of me, of course. So most of my artwork was really heavily influenced by my Caribbean culture. I would say that around the age of 5, I started to feel that creative urge, or the urge to just be playful with color, with sketching, with drawing, with using different materials. I would not say that I called myself an artist, though. I just felt like I had that creative urge, and luckily I had a family that was very supportive in allowing me to scribble and draw on different things, and putting me in different classes that would get me engaged in the arts. So during my time at high school, we actually spent a lot of time getting to know many other Caribbean artists. And at the time, I did feel like the industry in the Caribbean was heavily influenced or heavily dominated by male Caribbean artists who were very successful. So I rarely ever got to, or I don't remember actually going to a woman artist studio and actually seeing her space and seeing her work. But I did really enjoy getting to be involved with the artists, involved with their studio, seeing their work. This is an artist called James Armstrong, and luckily he invited me into his studio. I was able to see how he creates the movement in his pieces, how he mixes different colors. So that was something I really enjoyed as an artist who was still in high school at the time, because I hadn't seen anyone who was doing it full time in the Caribbean and actually successful. So that was really nice. And then that kind of infiltrated into my work. And I did a lot of acrylic paintings when I first started, and I also did a lot of sculpture, ceramic sculpture. So much of my work in the beginning was very traditional. It was very limited to what I learned in school, the techniques that I learned in school, and then me kind of trying to apply that to things that I was inspired by, which was African culture, which was Trinidadian culture and Caribbean culture as a whole. And I was really excited about this piece because it was actually my first ceramic sculpture, and it's a fountain. It actually works like if you turn it on, water comes out. So at the time, I was very experimental in the traditional sense, and you'll kind of see how my work evolves over time and what my work looks like today. So I worked a lot on trying to ensure that I remained creative, but also kind of looking at what other artists were doing, other artists who were actually successful in doing this full time. And if I was being realistic, at the time in the Caribbean, again, I didn't see anyone that looked like me, that was doing this full time, was successful, was international, had their work shown globally. And so I worked as hard as I could, and I got a scholarship from the government in Trinidad and Tobago. And that allowed me to study anywhere in the world, but I chose the United States, and Tampa, Florida specifically. Now, as a Caribbean girl, I needed the weather to be similar to at home. I don't do well in the cold. I don't do well when it's freezing. So that's why I chose Tampa mainly. And the University of Tampa's program offered a lot in terms of me being able to kind of play around in different fields and not feel stuck and limited to one specific thing. This was actually me in a class where they brought an artist in, and a woman artist. Her name is Monica Cook. And we were able to do different exercises in painting and learning different things from her as she practices. And she's a successful artist today. So that was really exciting because, as you saw in Trinidad, I would actually go to the artist studio, whereas in the US and at the University of Tampa, the artist was coming to our studios in school, just like I am here today. And so through my work in the studio, I actually felt like over time, I started to kind of hone my own artistic style as I experimented with different things and as I started to step outside of that box that I felt like the traditional world would often put you in. And so I really started doing a lot more research on the portraiture that I was creating, why I was creating these portraits, the impact that I wanted to make and who I was connecting with. And all of those things evolved over time to a body of work that connects with people through emotion, but also makes a positive impact in the community. So when you are thinking about your artwork and you're spending time in the studio, for me, I remember spending a lot more time in my studio than I would like my dorm room or anywhere else. So people would actually meet me in the studio and then see me there really early the next morning because I would spend so many hours just in the studio working and trying to hone my craft, not really knowing which direction I was going, but kind of just getting a sense of what it feels to be like where I visited that artist studio in Trinidad and I could see he was spending different hours. And it was kind of like a mirror image of him and a mirror image of Monica Cook, who came to my studio, and kind of implementing that same artistic process of giving my all to art at the time while I was in school. And that actually led me to my first public art show. Now, there's a story behind this. I was in my junior year, I believe, and I kept seeing these flyers going around for the Gasparilla Festival of the Arts. And a couple of people told me, you know, you should apply. It's a really great show. There's a lot of prize money. And there's actually an emerging artist section. So the festival is kind of split up into two different sections. There's the main festival where you have over 250 artists that come from all around the world. This is in Tampa, Florida. And their work is really high quality and they compete. It's over $92,000 in prize awards. And then there's also the emerging artist section where they actually supply you with a tent because you have to bring different materials, all of your materials, and kind of set up, but they supply you with a tent and they give you some sort of artist support so you're not just put out there on your own. But it's still a juried section of the festival. So at first I was very hesitant with applying because I just felt like my work was not at the standard yet and I felt like I wanted to do more. But I said, you know what, let me take a chance, put my work out there, see how people interact with it. And at the time, my work was very different because I was exploring mixed media artwork as well. I had started to experiment with using condoms on canvas. So that image that you guys saw before, that was me painting on top of condoms. And these three in the back are also condoms. It was to highlight victims of sexual abuse. So with the work being that jarring and kind of in your face, I was very hesitant of taking it outside of my classroom critiques and putting it out to the public and seeing how people would react. And again, taking that risk and seeing so many other international artists who have work of really high quality, and it being one of the highest paid juried art festivals with additional support for emerging artists, I just decided to go ahead and do it, and I actually ended up winning Best Emerging Artist that year. And I actually ended up selling those pieces as well that same day. So it really gave me chills to see how people reacted to my artwork outside of like the bias of my peers in school telling me, oh yeah, it looks good, or my professors telling me, oh yeah, that looks okay. I actually had people who were regular people who walk around, people who are art lovers, curators, museum, people who were on the boards for different museums, etc., viewing my work and actually saying, okay, this is something that you should continue doing. And it actually gave me the motivation to say, I'm not going to just create art just for it to be pretty and just for it to hang on someone's wall. I'm going to continue creating and keep pushing myself because I know that this is something that is going to impact the community in a very strong way, in a positive way. But also I'm paving the way for other artists who look like me or other people who are inspired to be or aspiring to be artists to take the shot and take a risk. So it's important for you to think about not only being in school and learning all of these different things, but also thinking about how can you create your own artistic voice? How can you learn these things in school? Yes, but also find different ways of stepping outside of the box and creating your own artistic style, your own artistic voice, and standing out in a crowd of international people amongst your peers. And it's not to say that you are trying to be better than anyone else, but to be different, to be authentic, and to be you. So remember I told you guys that that festival was split up into two shows. The first part is the emerging artist section. The second part is the actual main festival where over 250 international artists are. So once I won the emerging artist section, I was eligible to enter the main festival. And the second year that I had done it, I actually placed third. So I said, okay, let me continue. I want to try to push for first. The year after that, I placed second. And then in 2022, I actually ended up winning the Best in Show award for $15,000. Thank you. But this wasn't just about winning the festival, but it was about pushing myself to go beyond what I had done before, pushing myself to go beyond what I had done in my art practice. And I'll tell you more about how my art practice evolved because I started off with those mixed media condom pieces, but I pushed myself to completely remove paint out of my practice and start just using different materials that would push my artwork beyond the boundaries of traditional norms, but also get people to interact with art in a different way where they're able to spend a lot more time with the art piece and able to connect with the story a little bit more, connect with the portrait a little bit more, and just change how portraiture is viewed in the contemporary world today. So I took an experimental painting class at the University of Tampa, thinking that I was going to learn how to just be free with paints. Again, I wanted to step outside of that traditional box that they put you in, of being a hyper-realistic painter and everything needing to feel so perfect. And that class changed my entire life because it removed paints completely, and students were required to think a lot more about non-traditional materials that you could use to implement into your artwork, to implement into your practice, that you can use to create and look like a painting. So people were using a bunch of different things like utensils, pencil shavings, Dixie cups, a bunch of different things, and kind of arranging it in different ways to create landscapes, portraits, flowers, a whole bunch of different things. And I saw just a whole new world of art making. For me, I still wanted something that was kind of in my comfort zone that already had color, but I wanted to start experimenting with using thread and hand stitching my own portraits to create these portraits that not only had depth in terms of the glance that it would give you, but also depth in terms of the texture on the canvas and the meaning as well. So I would encourage you to start thinking of different ways that you can step outside of traditional norms, outside of that box that you usually put yourself in. Yes, you're looking at other artists and you're getting inspiration from them, and you're looking at their work and you're seeing that they've used traditional techniques, but how can you find some sort of a twist or find some sort of a non-conventional way of creating artwork? Maybe you don't even have to use a canvas, because a lot of times when we think of art, we'll automatically think of putting it on a canvas. So just try to think of different ways that you can step outside of your comfort zone. It's going to be scary, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but I can assure you that it's going to be one of your most successful works yet. So this was just the process of me. This was actually my first embroidered portrait. I decided to do a self-portrait because I was like, if I'm going to attempt this, I don't want to mess anybody else's face up. And I'm just going to do it on my face. If it comes out bad or ugly, then it's fine. I can always try to continue working and change my technique. But this was the first one, and I remember working on it a couple of days and then bringing it to class and everyone being like so shocked that I had, one, made so much progress on it, but two, that it was actually looking like a portrait. And it was so crazy because to me, when I was working in my dorm room on it, I didn't feel like it was any different from the work that I was already creating. And I didn't feel like it was that exciting, really. I actually just felt like it was a natural process to me. And it kind of felt like painting in a way, just with using a different material. So you can see I started playing with different types of thread as well. This is thread that you would typically use like on a sewing machine, but I was doing everything by hand, and I wanted to try to play around with how I could implement different forms of detail, using silky threads, using matte threads. So this just kind of shows the evolution of how my embroidery work went, and kind of also breaking the border of the canvas as well. I wanted to explore using round canvases instead of the traditional square or rectangular, and also kind of having the embroidery go past that border and having it invite people into the piece as well. So I want to talk about how that change in my work kind of filtered into my social media presence. Now, at the time, I did not have any social media. And my friends kept telling me, you should start on Instagram. There are so many other artists that are on there, and they're getting a lot of exposure. So why not start on Instagram? So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll start it. And I was going to use my name, but my name is very hard for a lot of people to remember and pronounce. So we were like, okay, what can we think of that's going to allow people to kind of catch on to your name or remember your name? And I was like, okay, well, I love art and I love food, so why not Art You Hungry? So that's how Art You Hungry came about. I know a lot of people ask me, how did I get my handle? So that's how that came about. And then I actually created like a logo as well that's supposed to be a plate that's like a palette, and then the knife and the fork are the brush and like a pencil. But this is just to show that I really created my social media at the time as a form of documentation and almost like a diary. And you can see from the posts that I would do back then that I would literally sew for a couple of days and then post the progress. And I kind of started building a community from that because not many artists at the time were sharing their process. Many people were sharing just the finished piece, like a finished sculpture or finished painting. And so again, finding that little gap where you can be unique and you can be different on social media. And for me, that was just posting my process and kind of updating people as I go. But also for me, it was literally a diary or some way of me documenting my process. So if you would like to, because not everybody needs a social media, but I would say decide why it's important for you. If you feel like you want to have it as a form of documentation, if you feel like you would like to inspire other people, to motivate other people, to educate other people, there are so many different reasons. And you can dig deeper and find your why for creating your social media. But I would strongly recommend having your physical portfolio as well as an online presence because it helps get many more eyes on your work. And then exploring different platforms as well. For me, Instagram works at the time, but maybe for you it might be YouTube. Maybe for you it might be TikTok. And again, think outside of the box, remain authentic to who you are, because when you try to be someone else, that person already exists online. So there's already a space that's made for them. But for you, find that gap that exists and make sure that you're being authentic to yourself. Now, this is a comparison of then and now. My profile picture has changed to a picture of me. It's no longer that logo. And you can see I've now increased to 100K followers. I don't want you to focus on the followers though. I want you to focus on the posts. Because a lot of people will see, oh, that person has got a lot of followers, or oh, that person has gained a lot of followers over time. But they also miss that I've also posted, I think it's like 377 different posts in between these two, in between that time. So you need to put that work in to ensure that you are building a community and not only getting new eyes on your work, but you're also maintaining the people that you have in your community now. Make sure that you're giving them updates. Why else would somebody follow you if you're going to leave your account dormant, or if you're not going to engage and make sure that they have something to stay updated with? So for me, I really enjoyed that my Instagram kind of changed over the years to not just represent my diary, but now be a community of art lovers and my full-time business. And again, it's not about the followers. For me at least, it's about these three things: community and making sure that you're building a network, and that could be your local community, that could be starting off with family and friends, because I mean, I think my first follower was maybe my sister. And it kind of grows over time, right? The impact that you're making. And again, while I was at school, I was just thinking about, okay, I want to impress my peers and I want to impress my professors. I was not thinking about on a global scale or on a national scale, but you should start thinking about that now, because if I had thought about that while I was at school, I can't imagine where I would be now. It's only when I started thinking, okay, my art is much bigger than the four walls of my classroom critique. You know, it can be seen on a global scale, it can be appreciated, it can be celebrated. So I would start thinking about that right now. And then most importantly for me is your purpose. Why is this important to you? My why is not going to be your why. Your why is not going to be someone else's why. So you need to dig deeper and find out, why is a career, a full-time career in the arts important to you? Is it about making money? Then, I mean, you can make a lot of money, but if it's solely about money, you're probably not going to have as much drive and as much passion. You need to find a specific reason as to why you're doing this that can help to motivate and inspire you along the way. And of course, I'll say this over and over, don't forget to experiment and live outside of traditional norms. So this is just an example of that global impact that I was talking about. I graduated in 2020, and during that time, it was the pandemic. So I actually lost my final BFA graduation show. At the University of Tampa, you would spend a lot of time creating this body of work that you need to exhibit. And that was completely gone. My studio was completely gone. And everything was indoors because it was during COVID, right? So I kept posting anyway, because I was still creating in my tiny apartment, but I had this community that I was building online, and I just said, you know what, this is the only way that people are going to see my work, and so I'm going to continue posting. And an art director from Time magazine came across my work on Instagram, and he sent me an email stating that he thought that my work was painted. He thought that it was a painting. And only when he realized that it was hand embroidered is when he was totally blown away. And that's how this Time magazine cover commission came about. So all of that to say, if you think that nobody's looking at your work, if you think that, oh, I posted it and I only got 3 likes, I posted it and I got 0 likes, it doesn't matter. Somebody's always looking, and as long as you are motivated, as long as you know your why, and as long as you're consistent and you stay consistent, things like this can happen for you as well. But also things like this are important for our global community. Again, this was during the pandemic when everything was so crazy. And we spoke, the art director and I spoke about something that would not only capture the attention of Americans, but just the world as a whole, because everything was really crazy during that time. So this hand-embroidered flag was really important to me, but also to the larger community as well. And my work, again, continued to evolve. Another example of community and impact, I remember it was actually during the pandemic as well. I had an internship at the Tampa Museum of Art. And I remember my last day there, because of the pandemic, I had asked, what's the procedure for getting your artwork into galleries, museums, etc., and having shows? And I remember someone telling me who worked there, usually it's later on in your career, probably like within 20 to 50 years when you've been traveled and you have a lot of awards and milestones, etc., then you're usually showing in a museum or you have a museum acquisition. Well, a year after the pandemic, again, I had entered this piece into Gasparilla Festival of the Arts. This was the piece that won second place at Gasparilla Festival of the Arts and was purchased by the Tampa Museum of Arts that same year as well. So again, another way of telling you that, yes, people will tell you traditionally you need to have all of these different things or you need to go this certain route. But if you truly believe that it can be done in a different way and you work towards it, it's possible. I'm not saying that if somebody tells you it needs to be done this certain way, then you need to go and break all of the rules. But find different ways of saying, okay, maybe it was done that way, but how can I change that narrative and have this not only work for me, but work to inspire other people, other artists to continue on their journey and take chances and experiment and take risks. And yeah, things kind of evolved for me as an artist in my practice, so where I was no longer just feeling stuck to working on a small scale. I have a huge fear of heights, so don't ask me how I ended up doing a 45-foot mural, but I mean, it's for the love of art, it's for the love of community, and doing things like this, even me speaking now, I probably should have said this at the beginning of the presentation, but I've always been very introverted, and doing things like public speaking or anything like that would make me very nervous. I'd be very sweaty, I'd be stumbling over my words, it would be a mess. I mean, I've improved over the years with my public speaking, but with murals, that's a whole different story. I still have that fear, but I still push through it anyway, because the feeling that I get when I'm up there painting and when I'm finished with the painting as well, I can't explain it. I can't put it into words. And the reaction that people have as well, that's me, if you can see there. The reaction that people have as well when they see the artwork and they make a connection with it, it's surreal, but it feels like it's perfect because it is. It's meant to happen this way. And I want this to inspire you as well to, if you have a fear, push through it and try to make something happen, because the cost of not doing it is probably greater than the cost of actually doing it. So I would say put yourself out there, take the risk. Again, this is another mural that I recently did in Tampa. So if you want to see this, it's near the Emily Arena. It's at the Palm Iorio Garage, and this one is 50 feet. So it's taller than the last one that I did. I don't think I will be going taller than this. But just to say that, one, putting yourself out there is important, but two, I remember when I was first starting to call myself an artist, and people would be like, oh, okay, what are you, a painter? Or what are you, a sculptor? Or you do drawings? And I always felt limited by having to be one thing in arts. for me, I've always felt drawn to just creating, and there are many other people that are like that, and I'm not saying that anything's wrong with just being a painter or just being someone that sculpts or anything like that, but if you do feel that urge to want to explore and do different things, you can, and you can still have that one artistic style that runs through and connects all of those different things, so people still know that it's your work. But it's important for you to experiment and try. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. I've had many projects that I've tried and I was like, yeah, nobody's going to see this. I'm just going to tuck this away. But it's important for you to at least try. This was a project with Disney. So if you go to Disney Springs, you will be able to see this mural as well. This one was a hand-stitched mask for the Black Panther release. So all of these things, typically when you think of doing different promotional materials for businesses like Disney, I thought that they would just hire a graphic designer to do something like this. Like, why would they hire someone to hand stitch? You know, but I've created that path and something different. So people can see that, yes, traditionally we can do something that's done in Photoshop, that's done using graphic design, but also we're now open in contemporary art and around the world in general. We're open to seeing new things in art. We're open to experimenting with contemporary practices and interacting with artists, and even me posting as well the process of creating this for them. Because again, not many people get to interact with the artists on that intimate level where you're seeing them working in the studio or you're seeing the piece before it's completed. And this is just to show you kind of the evolution of my work. So if you think back to the beginning where I was holding that fountain that I was so proud of, and the work that I do now, if I had stopped or I had just limited myself and put myself in a box and said, I'm just going to stick to painting. I want to just make sure that I'm being traditional and doing the right thing and following the rules. All of these things that I have created now, all of these experiments with fabric, with thread, and portraiture on a whole would not be here if I didn't step outside of my comfort zone and challenge myself. And ultimately having one of the things that was on my bucket list, an international solo exhibition. So this was in London of 2024. And this was really exciting as well because I had multiple people who came up to my booth and said, I've been following you since 2016. When you first started your account and you would post your process, and they live in London, that came to the show. So again, if you feel scared or you feel self-conscious about your work, I would still go ahead and post it. I would still go ahead and put yourself out there, maybe even asking for second opinions online. And yes, that may be opening yourself up to some criticism, but sometimes criticism is good. Sometimes it's motivating to help you to do better. And again, creating that community online is important. So for you, I would say if you're interested in different opportunities where you can start to explore in getting different grants, commissioned work, because a lot of people ask me, well, how do I go about getting commissions? How do I go about getting mural projects, etc.? How do I go about just showing my work in galleries? I would take I would take a picture of this. Cafe is awesome because you subscribe to their website and then you actually get updates on different shows that they have and you can apply. Some of them are free and then some of them there's like an artist fee where you pay like $25 or something like that to enter. But this was helpful for me. I mean, right now I actually have more opportunities that come to me than I need to seek. So I would have appreciated this list when I was in school so that I could at least get the ball rolling. And I'm telling you, over time, you won't need this because there will be so many opportunities that fly in that you'll be either rejecting it or passing it on to someone else. So this is a good list. And then as well, having your artist bio, having your artist statements, your artist resume, your CV, updating that. Even the smallest things that you do, I would keep note of it because it's important and it will help you in some way in the future. Just keeping a document or folder with all of these things is extremely important. And yeah, so some key takeaways for you guys. I would celebrate your identity and your background. I could have said, I'm from Trinidad, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm going to stay there. I'm going to just stay in the Caribbean and try to market myself here. But I decided, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to leave my family and friends behind, and I'm going to explore what it means to be an artist all around the world. And I'll start in the US. So taking risks is important, not only just in the opportunities that you do as an artist, but also in your practice as well. So remembering not to feel like you're limited by traditional norms of the methods that you need to use and the materials that you need to use, but stepping outside of that and just experimenting and having fun. It doesn't always have to be a masterpiece that you create, but that experiment could be a stepping stone into something greater. I would recommend developing both a physical portfolio and some sort of an online presence, because I believe that that has helped me a lot with a lot of the opportunities that I get today. And then, of course, thinking about the impact that you're making, not only about you. I mean, we often always want it to be about ourselves, but about the wider community as well, about your local community and how you can get involved, but also thinking on a global scale, because the world needs more of our art. So why would you starve the world of your greatness? Thank you, and I'll open it up for any questions that you guys have now.